All right, today we are diving deep into the story of two absolutely monumental figures, Moses and Yeshua. We're going to look at their roles as the inaugurators of two of the most significant covenants in history. This is a story that stretches from a dusty mountain in the desert all the way to a heavenly sanctuary. It's really the story of a pattern and its ultimate fulfillment. So let's just jump right in with this central question, right? The Bible talks about an old covenant and a new covenant. But you have to wonder, if the first one was given by God himself, why on earth was a second one even necessary? What was the flaw in that original design that required such a radical update? So here's our game plan. We're going to break this all down. We'll start by looking at that original pattern set by Moses. Then we'll pinpoint the core problem it couldn't solve, mortality. From there, we'll see how a better covenant was actually promised. And finally, how Yeshua steps in as the new inaugurator, completely flipping the system from something external written on stone to something internal, written right on the heart. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning with our first inaugurator, Moses, and the incredible pattern he established at Mount Sinai. First off, what even is a covenant inaugurator? This isn't just some fancy title. It's a very specific, almost legal role. Think of this person as the official mediator, the one who establishes a binding contract between God and the people. And the signature, the thing that makes it legally binding, is always a blood ritual. In the story of Israel, Moses is the very first person to step into this critical role. And believe me, this was not just a handshake deal. If you read Exodus 24, it describes this incredibly formal, solemn ceremony. Moses builds an altar, he reads the terms of the agreement out loud, and all the people shout back their consent. But then comes the most intense part. The blood of sacrificed animals is literally sprinkled on the people. This wasn't just symbolic. It was the legal act that sealed the deal, binding them to God. And just like that, a nation is born. This covenant established their formal relationship with God, and the terms, they were crystal clear. Follow the path, you'll be blessed. But break the covenant, engage in willful rebellion, and the consequence is death. The stakes could not have been any higher. But this system, as powerful as it was, had a huge limitation. And this brings us right to the central conflict of the whole story, the problem of mortality. This quote from the scholar Rico Cortes really just nails the issue. He says, "The Torah itself does not supply a sacrifice that could do away with mortality." Just think about what that means. The system, God's perfect instruction, was amazing for dealing with sin, for purifying the community, but it had one fundamental limitation. It had zero power over death itself. It was a fix for life, not a solution for mortality. And this timeline here really shows you the problem perfectly. The entire system was running on a mortal clock. A priest is appointed, he serves, he makes sacrifices, and then he dies. The book of Hebrews actually says he was prevented by death from continuing in office. So what happened? They disappoint a new priest, and the whole cycle would start all over again. It was a temporary patch, you see, not a permanent solution, because it was run by men who were just as subject to death as everyone else. But here's the thing. This weakness, this flaw, it wasn't a surprise. In fact, the scriptures themselves pointed toward a coming upgrade. Let's take a look at how a better covenant was promised long before it ever arrived. Centuries go by, and then the prophet Jeremiah drops this absolute bombshell from God. He says, "Behold, the days are coming when I will make a new covenant, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers." Wow. This wasn't just some minor update. This was a promise of a total system overhaul. A completely new way of relating to God was on the horizon. So what would this new system even look like? Well, a clue is kind of hidden away in Psalm 110, which talks about this mysterious ancient figure named Melchizedek. His priesthood was totally different. You see, you didn't get in because you were from the right family, like the Aaronic priests, who all had to be from the tribe of Levi. Nope, this was an eternal appointment, straight from God. And even more radical, this priest was also a king. The new covenant was going to need a totally new kind of mediator, one who held both of those roles. And this, of course, is what leads us to the new inaugurator, Yeshua, who steps right into history to fulfill this ancient pattern. And this comparison chart just lays it all out so clearly. Look at the contrast. Moses' pattern was earthly, it happened at Mount Sinai, it involved the blood of animals, and it resulted in a temporary annual covering for sin. But Yeshua is the reality. His inauguration is in the heavenly sanctuary with his own blood, and it secures a permanent, eternal redemption from death. The first was the shadow. This is the substance. Now, the Bible says this whole thing required a change in the law. And honestly, that phrase can be super confusing. It doesn't mean God's moral standards just got thrown out the window. The original Greek word here is metathesis, which literally means to transfer or to change position. The best way to think about it is like a change in management. The administration of the covenant was being transferred from that old earthly system of mortal priests to a brand new heavenly system with an eternal high priest. So here's the bottom line. The new covenant is built on better promises for one very simple, very powerful reason. It offers the one thing the first system never, ever could: total victory over death itself. It finally solves that mortality problem that haunted the entire first system. And that leads us to the final and, I think, the most profound change of all: the incredible shift from a law on stone to a law written on the heart.
Okay, this is the most incredible outcome of this whole story. The real game changer in the new covenant isn't a change to the law itself. The standard of righteousness doesn't change one bit. What changes is its location.
Under that first covenant, right, the law was an external thing. It was literally carved on tablets of stone. It was a code you had to obey from the outside in, something you had to conform your behavior to. But the stunning promise of the new covenant was completely different. God says through the prophet Jeremiah, "I will put my Torah within them, and I will write it on their hearts." Suddenly, the law is no longer this external object. It actually becomes part of your very being. This right here is the fundamental upgrade. The focus shifts entirely from external compliance, doing the right thing because the code says you have to an internal transformation where you actually want to do the right thing because your very heart has been rewired.
So how do you solve the age-old problem of human disobedience? Well, you don't solve it by just lowering the standard. God's solution was so much more radical. He performs what one theologian calls a divine surgery. He doesn't change the law. He changes the human heart.
So we'll end with this thought to just chew on. A law written on stone demands obedience from the outside. But what does a law that's written on the heart inspire from within?